Oh, wow. We are now broadcasting live, and it looks like we have a couple of people in the waiting room. So we'll wait a couple of minutes before we dive right into our content. Can you guys let me know if you can hear me all right? Do I need to speak up, get a little closer? Is the volume okay? Is it? Perfect, perfect, perfect. All right, I'm going to change my screen. As people are coming in the room, I have a couple of questions. Let's do an icebreaker like we would as if we were in a classroom or in some professional development. Where is everyone watching from? So that'll be our first question that I'll drop into the chat. Ooh, got to get my typing speed up a little bit. All righty. We've got about 3 minutes before we officially begin. I'm going to go mute for just a second and we'll get started here shortly. Hey, Dr. Z, thanks for logging on. All righty, all righty, all righty. This is the official welcome to Rhythm's webinar, Back to School Reluctancy and Building a Classroom and Campus Culture of Learning Readiness. I'd first like to thank each and every one of you for carving out this time to spend with us today. And the goal today, really and truly, is to make a bridge between wellness, well being, and education. If we all put our minds together, if we all discuss the difficult topics, then we'll be able to get further faster. So, we really want this to be a space where we can ask questions and where we can discover strategies that we can walk away and put into good practice quickly. So, before I get any further, I would love to invite my presenters to share just a little bit about themselves to anyone who's watching. If you all would tell us your name, give us a little bit about your background, and an interesting fact about yourself. How about we start with Ms. Johnson?
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Delicia Johnson. I am a licensed clinical social worker. And let's see, so a little bit about my background. I've worked in education as a social worker. So I've done direct practice, so that means directly with kids. And then I've worked indirect practice. So I've worked on the admin level where I help support teachers and our what we consider student support services. So like our counselors, other social workers in the district, principals, admin, we basically say like the adults who are affiliated and associated with our district, and help them by either supporting like through trainings or providing like modeling, things like that to help build the bridge between the adults and the kids and or students and parents, to build those connections and how do they we like to say, like, how do you be good humans to each other? And so that's a big part of what I have done in the district in the past. And then currently I am working as a therapist doing telehealth in the state of Texas. So that's a little bit about me and my background.
Thank you so much.
Oh, interesting fact about myself. Sorry about that. I love to travel like all over. And when I go places, it can be like the middle of nowhere, but I want to know where like the best place is to eat. So, a foodie at heart.
You've had some interesting travels when we worked together with your former district. I was very excited to hear about where you were going and what you were doing. Oh man, Ms. Cunningham.
Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Cunningham. I am a classroom teacher. I've been a classroom teacher for a little over 10 years, mainly focusing in later elementary, so fourth, fifth, and sixth grades. I started my career in Alabama and am now teaching in New York City, which is quite a different situation, but I really am enjoying my current role and school. I am a homeroom teacher, so I focus on all subjects, and I am currently teaching at an all-boys school, which is which is an interesting thing to be able to practice mindfulness and wellness in the classroom with all boys students. So, and an interesting fact about myself. Let's see. I'm always like, oh, I'm so interesting, and then I'm just not. I also love to travel. I spent 11 days in Greece this summer, and I thought that nothing could beat Italian food, but Greek food beats Italian food for me. So there we go. Also a foodie at heart.
Definitely. Thank you so much for joining us. Ms. Draper.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kendra Draper, and I am what my district considers an instructional partner. This is about my 14th year in education. I've spent time in the classroom, but in my current role, I support my district by providing professional development, partnering with teachers on how we can improve the strengths that are happening in their classrooms and support some of those areas that we want to see growth in. I currently work at a K-12 school, and we are blended, which means some of our students are completely virtual, and then we have students who fulfill their requirements virtually but also come in person, and we like to focus on a lot of project-based learning at that time. An interesting fact about me, I don't know if this is interesting or if it just says that I'm crazy. I have a 10-year-old daughter, and I also have a 1-year-old son. So that makes my life very interesting at this moment in time. But I'm super excited and just honored to be able to have this conversation with you guys.
Wow. Thank you guys so very much. You all so very much. So why don't we jump right into it? I think challenging conversations are definitely worth having. So being as though we have representation from what would maybe considered admin support staff, a direct classroom and homeroom teacher who's tasked with mindfulness, and complete admin virtual, like all of the things. I want to know what you all think are the challenges during back to school season that educators are facing. Are you finding that students are reluctant to return to the classroom? So let's begin to chat there. What are the challenges? And you guys can just answer at will. Anybody can come off of mute.
Well, I can give some challenges from like different perspectives. Let's see. So I guess from like the school-based perspective, a lot of things that we noticed challenges with kids coming back. So I'm in the state of Texas, like I mentioned earlier. And so, of course, everyone went through COVID, right? But we also experienced things like Snowmageddon, if you guys all remember us in the news. And then, of course, we had the Uvalde shooting at the end of the school year a few months ago. Those kids just returned back to school yesterday. And so our particular state and the students that we have the luxury of, with our teachers and their parents, is that we're still constantly going through things, and there are a lot of challenges that are affecting like their social emotional well-being. And I feel like if schools and or classrooms aren't supporting that, especially in the first parts of the school day and the year, that can be a big challenge, because there are students who are ready to come back because there was such a disconnect with them social and emotionally, like not being able to be there with their students and with other students, their teachers and peers. And they were at home for like a year and a half, right? And so those are students who are craving that social well-being. But then you also have the students who are not, right? And so they're still having a hard time, like how do they find their people again, right? Because a lot of times when we did trainings last year with teachers, we had to say, think back to when that kiddo first was last at school. For instance, my son, he was in the 7th grade last year, but when he left school during the pandemic, he was a 5th grader. So he went from elementary to middle school overnight, it felt like, right? And so there's a lot that we miss, those opportunities that are learned in the classroom, that are learned at school, that you can't necessarily learn at home all the time, especially if you're like an only child or your parent is working, right? So yeah, that's a lot of challenges, that connection piece, I feel like, in that well-being piece for our kids.
Boy, yes. Yes, yes.
I definitely, I think that working in an elementary school setting, especially now that we're a couple years out from COVID, some of the lockdown part of it, some of the students that I will be welcoming into my room, I start school tomorrow morning, will be, they were first graders when the lockdown happened. So, and for the past couple years as a 4th grade teacher, I've been seeing students come in that are emotionally just behind where a quote unquote normal 4th grader would be walking into the classroom. Of course, no 4th graders are normal, but and I'm seeing high levels of anxiety among students and teachers in my building. I'm seeing insomnia. I'm seeing gut issues. I'm seeing, it's just across the board that the struggle with that social emotional piece that we, before COVID happened, there was some focus there that I would, in my classroom practice some mindfulness things. But when they stepped back into my classroom and I was looking at 4th grade bodies, but, 2nd grade brains, for lack of a better way to apply that, I just realized how much I needed to stop pushing the academic rigor so far and pull back and say, okay, how do I take care of this kid that sits in my classroom that can't, they will want to remove themselves from the physical space because they're uncomfortable. And then also, I just think, like, as educators ourselves, we're walking back into a situation that was traumatic for us a couple years ago. We're burnout, high levels of anxiety. Summer's not always relaxing, so we're stepping back into the classroom and we might not have gotten the break that we had hoped. And it's across the board, it's a difficult time. So finding space to reflect and be intentional about taking care of ourselves as teachers and as educators in general is so very important.
Absolutely. Mrs. Draper, did you want to chime in on that one?
Well, I don't want to rehearse any of the things that these ladies have already said, but coming from a standpoint, and I agree wholeheartedly, from kind of that out of the classroom, I think that there has to be, as Ms. Cunningham mentioned, a balance between the need to move our students forward so that academic progress can be achieved, but also the knowledge that these students have gone through and educators have gone through traumatic experiences, even outside of just living within the pandemic, all the layers that are, tucked into that. Some people had never had to teach in a virtual space. And overnight we're told, hey, I don't really have the resources for you to do this. I don't really have the know-how, but somehow make it work. Or the students who may not have had, the support at home that was needed, all the way to those who going to school is an escape from what is happening at home. So what they are experiencing on a day-to-day basis is elevated with that trauma. And so I think that the conversations that we're trying to have are, yes, how can we be mindful that our students at some point, we do have to, I don't want to say get back to normal, because our new normal is here and we're in it, right? But on the other hand, how do we continuously move them forward academically without forgetting that their mental state, because developmentally, even if you're 5 to 18, you're still developing mentally. How can we honor the spaces that they are in? I think one of the other things is always, as a former classroom teacher, that I always worried about with back to school was, am I really ready? And that didn't mean that I did not spend all of my summer preparing, but that thought of, am I ready? Do I know enough about my students' backgrounds? Who has an IEP? Who has a 504? Who is a runner? Who has a peanut allergy? All of the things am I ready with my content? Is that ready to go? Are my copies made? Like all of these things, but then layering on the,
Oh no. Let's see if it refreshes in just a second. Wow, you guys. I think the conversation, part of the reason I wanted to have this conversation is because if you're
we're
not,
still walking through COVID, is another layer that the teachers.
can you hear us? Oh man, I hate that we're missing this part of it. Part of the reason I wanted to have this conversation is because I don't think everybody knows all of the challenges that come along at the beginning of the year. I think it's a unique situation that you all are able to speak to. Trauma from things that are continuously going on in our communities. Um, Having students have that anxiety because they just don't have the emotional maturity to be able to regulate or to be able to say, okay, here's where I am. This is what is expected of me. And even though I may not be conscious of everything that's going on around me, I don't feel okay. And the teachers themselves feeling that anxiety, the support staff, the administrative staff feeling that anxiety and pressure. How do we deal with this? How do we move forward from a place of no one is ready, no one feels equipped, no one feels like they have all the tools and information? Maybe if each of you all could give me an example or share with us an example of something that you've done to deal with all of these feelings and all of these situations in your, I want to say practice because I'm a clinician, in your classrooms or in your settings.
I can start again. So one of the things that we encouraged, excuse me, I'm going to take a step over.
Absolutely.
Sorry about that. Excuse me. One of the things that we encouraged in our district was a lot of self-care.
Mm.
And the biggest thing, excuse me, I had a tickle in my throat right when I was about to start talking.
Typical.
Isn't it always, right? And so self-care is a lot more than going to go do your favorite thing, or whether it's getting a massage or going to do exercise or having your favorite beverage or thing to do, right? It's so much more than that. What are you doing every single day to take care of yourself? What are you doing every single hour to take care of yourself? And it has to be balanced, like the social, emotional, spiritual, physical, mental, like all of the things that you're doing alongside and building that toolbox. Because the thing that works for you right now or today may not be the thing that works for you tomorrow or in a different situation. And so it's that constant thing that you're doing to help build, you know, so when a time does come and when something big does impact you. So a lot of things that we encourage is, of course, like the mindfulness. So is it yoga? Is it taking a 5-minute break, from the computer, from the work? And I know that's a hard thing to tell a teacher to do, especially if you're on the elementary level and you're with the same group of kiddos all day. But maybe it's a walkabout that the whole class is doing. Like everybody stands up and does a brain break, or everybody stands up and does a walkabout in the classroom. How do you implement these little things that can help support? Like physical movement is a huge factor. And if you can implement that into the day, what does that look like? So for me, sitting in front of a computer all day, we went to a wellness training a few months ago, and he basically said, your 5-minute, what does he call it? 5-minute walkabout. So every hour, take a 5-minute walkabout.
I love
And I
that.
was like, wow, simple. How can we do that every day?
Ooh, I love that.
That's fantastic. I was sitting here jotting down notes while you're speaking. It's like, let's get up and walk around the room. As far as things that I've hopefully been able to implement in my classroom to help aid with this whole traumatic situation, kind of starts with the thankfulness that I have for my school community. And through all of this, I work for a small school and it's an independent school. So I will state that. But our admin took it upon themselves to, split up the load. And so some of our admin were solely responsible for making sure that we as teachers had what we needed. They focused on us so that we could focus on the kids. And I think well taken care of teachers, happy, supported, in many different ways, are going to be happier, better, and more effective teachers. As far as myself, I sought therapy. I, practiced yoga. I was able to center myself, in all those different areas to try to be the best person that I could when I showed up into the classroom each day. Not always the best person I could be naturally, but I really focused on, I also had the privilege of being able to teach the same grade level throughout all of these couple years of, transition and uncertainty and trauma. So my content really didn't change. I was able to focus on taking care of myself so that I could take care of my students. And I think that was the biggest game changer for me, is that I felt taken care of. And I know that that's very much not the story of a lot of teachers in our country. So I recognize that. But I've seen firsthand what teachers who are taken care of can accomplish in the classroom. And it speaks volumes to funding our education system appropriately. That's a bigger topic, but it really what made all the difference.
Ooh, I have a couple of follow-up questions for you both. Ms. Johnson, working those self-care practices, moments into the day, as someone who wasn't a classroom teacher, someone who wasn't there on the academic side, how did you manage to convince, persuade, motivate those who are there for instruction purposes that there's value in having those self-care moments for the students and the staff?
That is a great question. And I'm pretty sure Katie can attest to this. I'm pretty sure something similar might have been happening in her district, or I'm pretty sure across the United States or world. But I believe it all boils down to who the administration is in a district and how they value self-care and well-being. So if you have individuals who are taking care of themselves, like what is the work that you're doing for yourself? So if you are someone who believes in spiritual well-being or mental health well-being and physical well-being, and you practice these things on a daily basis and you know how helpful it is for you, then those are things that you're going to want to implement for your people, you know what I mean? Or in your classroom, because you know that it works. So we were able to work with some, because our district was a large district, and so there's a lot of administration staff, and so we like to say we were like the grassroots or like the tortoise, and so if we can't move the needle for the whole, how can we do it individually? So it was whoever wanted to listen about self-care and wellness. We offered trainings and things like that. We offered a session on creating like your wellness plan, for instance. We like to call it like your insurance plan for your wellness. And so we had hundreds of almost thousands of teachers who completed this. And we had a lot. We have over 7,000 teachers in this district. And so teachers were able to find those little things. Like, I always make the joke when I did this training that a teacher once told me, well, I always made fun of the person, sorry, y'all, who was in the Chick-fil-A line. Y'all know how long the Chick-fil-A line is. And they only got a cup of tea, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, why would you go to the Chick-fil-A line just for some tea? And that was a part of someone's wellness plan, right? They needed like that Dr. Pepper or that tea. That was their small thing that they needed every single day that got them through the day. And I was like, wow, that makes all the world of a difference, you know, for the teacher who can't just go on a bathroom break whenever they want to, right? It's not that traditional corporate America where you just leave your desk when you need to or want to. You have to go on a schedule, you know? And those are some small things. It might be turning the lights down in your classroom, you know? And so all of these things that we learned from other teachers, we were able to share with other staff. And like I said, it was one by one, campus by campus, teacher by teacher. And just how do we move that needle slowly? And then once people start to see, they start to share, like, this is what I'm doing. This is how I'm taking care of myself. This is some of the things that I do. And so that's how I feel like you can do it when there's a large district, when you don't have a lot of buy-in from the top.
Okay. Oh, that's beautiful. Each one, teach one, inspire one. Ms. Cunningham, similar follow-up question for you. It sounds like for your school, it's a top-down approach. How, if you were a part of those discussions, or if you've heard since you've been there, what was the mile marker that had them prioritize teacher well-being and allowed them to make it such a high priority, but not just in words, but also in actions?
So our school community, parents, teachers, admin, students, it was so important for the entirety of the community to be back in person in the fall of 2020. And I think that they formed several committees and were like, okay, how do we do this in a way that makes people feel safe, supported, you know, like uplifted across the board. So the committee that they called it, there were two committees. There's a faculty and staff wellness committee that was created. And that was to focus solely on how do we get teachers back in the building the most effectively? What do they need for that? And then there was another committee called the Parent COVID Committee, and it was parent input and discussion around health guidelines, wellness guidelines. So there were those two committees, and then the two would have joint meetings here and there. And I would say getting us back in the building was the goal and was the mile marker to push this initiative forward. And I think that I live in New York City. Our parent committee, our parent body and our student body are in New York City. And COVID was absolutely terrifying here in the spring. A lot of my students were in their apartments from March to June. They didn't leave. So seeing how traumatic and traumatizing that was for our student body made it all the more important to get them back into the building. And so they, the parent COVID committee put in the right kind of filters. They, focused on, putting in the right HVAC system. They were like, teach with your windows open. We were into getting into the building. And that was when we saw how successful us coming back into the building was. That drove forward that we have to continue this effort. And it's been upheld through 2 years of school.
Wow. Whew. Okay. So this has been a little heavy so far. We've talked about the challenges and we've talked about convincing and showing proof of value so far. So let's take just a small little pivot. I'm going to encourage everyone to build a community of support for yourselves. So if you feel comfortable doing so, if you're on social media or if you have a Twitter handle, drop it in the comments in the chat so that you can have a list of individuals that you can reference. Well, hey, what are they doing up there in New York? Hey, what are they doing down here in Alabama or Texas? If you feel comfortable, participant or presenter, we'd like to encourage you all to drop your social media handles, or let me pull up a quick little link for you guys. You can join the Rhythm community and we can all just meet up there on Facebook and chat about our challenges and our successes when it comes to building well-being in this K-12 setting. I also have a door prize. So for everyone who has registered and is in the room currently, I'm about to do a random drawing. So virtual drum roll, please. Okay. It might take a second to pull up. I appreciate y'all being willing participants there. Y'all were ready with the drum roll. Let's see. I will say this is my first time using Big Marker and I'm absolutely loving it. It's not a commercial for them or anything, but they have so many options available for us. Let's see. For us to use, making it a little bit easier. All right, I'm going to drop the name in the chat here. And just to be on the safe side, when I drop the winner's name, if you don't mind, send me a private message with your email address and I'll get your door prize sent out to you. All righty. Let's see. Give me just a second, guys. Actually, if I could get Sade or Kelly K to drop the Facebook page link for me, or Dr. Z, guys, we've got the Rhythm team in the house. I appreciate you guys for joining us today too. It's really awesome to have support from your coworkers when you are doing something new. So let me pull up what door prize number 1 actually was so we can all be very jealous and make sure that we send the next webinar registration link out to all of our friends and family so they can be eligible as well. Let's see. This first one is, you guys ready for this? You ready? It's actually going to be $100 gift card to Amazon. So congratulations, way to go. Thank you for being in the room. Stick around for the end of the webinar, guys, because we do have one more door prize to give away. I'm not promising it's going to be as amazing, but it's a pretty good door prize. I know, right? I'm jealous too. All of us rhythm employees are like, really? All right, let's jump back into our topics. I have to say, I would be remiss if I didn't say that the door prizes are brought to you by Rhythm app. It is an online, a web-based tool to help your students check in on how they're doing, how their well-being is going, mentally, emotionally, physically, socially, and just making sure that they're okay, making sure that they have a way to communicate to you, teachers and staff members, and them knowing that there will be someone there who can respond and doing it in a manner that they're comfortable in communicating with. So this was sponsored by the Rhythm Check-in. All right. Anxious students. Let's jump into this topic. Anxious students. From the different viewpoints that you all sit at, do you believe that most people on your campuses, most people in your K-12 setting are equipped with dealing with anxiety that students are facing?
Oh, were you gonna go, Katie? Okay. I think that most districts are equipped with the tools. And speaking from a large district that has a lot of funding, meaning from the aspect that there is a lot of social, emotional, mental health type of individuals who have funded positions, right? Because of whether it's grant, whether it's state funding, blah, 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 so on and so forth. However, when you are in a huge district and the student to mental health professional ratio is so large, it's not as easy to help support all of the students who are probably in need, especially after, like I said before, what so many of our teachers and students have been going through over the last few years and beyond, right? Like COVID, it just opened the wound for other things that were out for display for other people to find out about. It wasn't anything new, like what our kiddos were going through. It just kind of, heightened it. So I think that's a big part of it. So when there is one counselor on a campus and there are hundreds of students, let's say on an elementary campus, and even if they do have, say, a social worker on campus, that's still just two people to hundreds of students, let alone supporting the adults on the campus, because there's a lot of times when the teachers need just as much, if not more help than our kiddos, right? Because they want to deal with their mental well-being. So back to your question with that anxiety to help support our kids, yes and no is the answer. Are there individuals, mental health professionals who want to help? And if they could do that all day, every day, yes, they absolutely can or would, right? But when you are, whether it's your district, whether it's your state, and the mandates that they have, not only on, like, teachers have mandates, right? But counselors have mandates, right? How much time they can spend direct practice with kiddos, how much of that percentage of their time are they doing admin things, or are they doing changes to schedules, or are they doing all these other things that fall into the academic world that play little to no part in the mental health world. And so if that ratio was a little bit different, or that breakdown was a little bit different, maybe things will look a little bit different. So then you have mental health professionals who are on campuses who could possibly do work for kids, but they now are stretched thin. And then do you make referrals out to agencies out in the community? But then you are breaking that connection that you've already had with students and their families, and then now they have to work. It's this big, long thing. And then how is the community mental health, right? I know in the state of Texas, it's probably not as great as some other states where there are a ton of services for kids. And And in our community, there's not as many as we would like. There are a lot of times where kids are on waiting lists, and there are adults who are on waiting lists. And so how do we help our kids? How do we help support the adults who are helping our kids, whether it's the parents or the teachers, and providing them tools and resources? So it comes down back to the school setting where a kid is spending most of their day, that student. So how do they do things like check-ins, and how do they do things like mindfulness or yoga or walk-arounds or mental breaks that they could do in the classroom to help support that angst and that anxiety that a kiddo, because it, at this point, especially from my perspective, it almost falls on all. So how do we provide the tools for all so that they can help the students, you know?
Absolutely. Ooh,
Yeah.
ma'am. Oh, yes, ma'am. Ms. Draper, I think I saw you unmute as well.
Yeah, I think she talked about a lot of the things that came to my mind. I think there just has to be a merger because as, like I said, a former classroom teacher, your heart is extended to your students, but you are a human as well. And a lot of times our background, maybe we got one class in things like behavior management or, and I know when I was in school years ago, we didn't really talk about our emotions and mental health and things like that, even though it was of equal importance. I didn't get a lot of knowledge on that coming through undergrad or when I did my master's program. So I think that as a teacher, we're always looking at how can we merge because the plate is so full already. I think that when I experienced reluctancy with teachers around some of these topics, it's not that they're not in tune with the needs of their students. It's not that they don't want to go that extra mile. But as Ms. Johnson mentioned, there are just so many other things that they are being held accountable for. Conversations like this are so important because we have to figure out ways to continue to merge that whole child set of needs, where it is not one more thing that I'm asking you to do. And I'm trying to figure out, okay, when am I going to pencil this in under differentiated instruction and small group and rotating in and, you know, all of the things that we're required as educators to do on a day-to-day basis. So I love some of the ideas that were mentioned with the previous question on partnering with those individuals who have a desire to see some of those things happening within their classroom. And I think it's super important to hear from the classroom teacher's perspective because a lot of times a resource can be introduced in a setting and the intention and the motive is to do nothing but support students. But because it is outside of how the teacher would maybe organically layer it into his or her classroom, it's something that gets rejected or pushed to the side. Again, not because they're not interested, but because there's just only so many hours in the day. So having these conversations, I think, with classroom teachers, those who are choosing the resources, those who are choosing the direction that the schools are going to go in, is so important so that we can work towards a common goal and not work against our students and lose so much valuable time that we don't have to waste.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Ma'am?
I'll just add something quickly to what you ladies have said, which covers, I mean, everything basically that I was thinking. But, we're talking about a trickle-down effect, about coming from the higher ups and not wanting to add another thing onto a teacher's plate. I think that it all can boil down to scheduling. So if there is a master schedule for a school that has a mindfulness, 10 minutes built into every day. We worked our schedule out this year to where there's 20 minutes on a Tuesday and then 5 to 10 minutes every morning to where we're going to be practicing meditation. So it was scheduled into my day, and it is not something that I have to take away, 10 minutes from my English class or, 15 minutes from history here and there. It was built in and given to me as a separate block. And that will help me because I can teach the kids will have the strategies, and we'll work towards those things with them, and I will work towards it myself. But we were able to build it in, and that has to come from above me. That's not the classroom teacher's space, I guess.
I think it's so interesting what all of you all have articulated so well. I think we've come to a point in time where there has to be an overall strategy shift. I was watching a documentary earlier this week, and it really spoke to how physical education, PE, came into place. Americans were suffering. People had heart disease. We weren't living as long, and we weren't able to be as productive. I think we've hit that same space with our well-being and our wellness. So they've literally carved out time because we had enough data, we had enough evidence to say that, hey, people can live better, people can feel better, people can be more productive if we add these things to our regular schedule, if we add these things to our daily activity. So we literally have a mandatory credit for PE before you can graduate. You have to practice these things. So I think as we continue to have these conversations and everyone illuminates that we don't have time, it's a lot of extra things, we want to get it done, it's important, it's valuable to us, that we continue to talk about making space for these things, and shifting our perspective so that it's not one of those added duties, one of those added tasks. You guys represent three very different settings that education is going on within. So I would love to ask, give me something really practical. Give our viewers something very, very practical that they can do to create that environment either on your campus, whether it be virtual or in person, in your classroom, that eases the stressors. Anxiety, reluctancy, it's a stressor that eases the stressors and puts students in a position where they can hear the information, they can retain that information, and they can respond to the testing. So let's talk about the climate of the classroom or the campus. Give me some practical things. So if I'm walking away today and I'm a classroom teacher, if I'm walking away today and I'm a counselor, a school counselor, or if I'm walking away today and I'm an administrator who this isn't really my zone of expertise, where's one place that I can start or something that I can put into action today or tomorrow?
Okay, I'll jump in. I think one of the things that you can put in immediate practice is creating the climate and culture that you want in your classroom. I think sometimes as educators, we jump into our content specific, and it's like, I already don't feel like I have enough time to cover all of my standards. We got to get going. This assessment is coming up at this time, all the accountability pieces. But I think that going slow to go fast at the beginning, creating those, and it sounds, I know, just common sense, but some of these things fall by the wayside because we have to get the content rolling. But creating those routines, creating what's acceptable. I called my classroom Team Draper, and we would always say, once we get into this space, there are some things that are fouls. There are some things that are, you get a penalty flag for that. And we would create what we determined made us feel safe in our classroom. I did not have my rules posted at the beginning of the school year. Once we started getting to know each other, once we started determining, okay, what should that look like when we disagree? What is an acceptable way to tell someone that you don't like the way that they're speaking to you? Let's come up with that, being collaborative, but then also let's hold each other accountable for it. I would tell them all the time that, what I feel like is as equally of importance as your academic growth is your emotional well-being and who you're going to be, what type of member you're going to be in society. And because I did teach, kindergarten through third grade, they don't pick that stuff up by osmosis. Those are things, how we talk to each other, how we treat each other, how we wait our turn. we can't take for granted that creating that climate is something that's just going to happen by handing them just a set of rules and expectations. So I would say taking the time as school is starting to help your students create the climate that they want to exist in on a day-to-day basis.
Nice.
Absolutely. The whole time you're speaking, I was like nodding my head like crazy. I have 3 words written down when it comes to something, 3 words written down and an idea that comes to something very applicable in my classroom and that you could take with you. Students academically and non-academically are wanting structure, consistency, and understanding. Those are 3 things that if you can provide those things, your content will be taken care of because those are expected. Like Kendra said, when I walk into the classroom with my students on the first day, there are no rules posted. I do a my job, your job, our job chart. And we hang it up in the classroom. We call it our class contract. We all sign it at the bottom and we come up with, okay, what is my job as an individual in this classroom? And so we talk about them individually, what they need to do in order to be the most successful student. Then I have them tell me, what is your job? I say your job as in my job as the teacher. What's my job? What do I need to do in order to make this classroom run smoothly? And then our job as a classroom community, what do we need to do together in order to excel, to succeed, to get through this together? And it has really, when it comes to classroom management, when it comes to any sort of disciplinary measures, I look at the thing at the class contract and I say, you broke, this specific agreement that we made. And they'll be like, yeah, you're right, I did. And that has created such a culture in my room that has been so helpful for upper elementary and even for lower elementary and middle school and high school. I could see it being very helpful and applicable in every classroom.
Nice. Thank you.
Can I jump in one more second? Just something she said just inspired me. I'm sorry. And mute me if I don't need to say anything if it's not my turn. But that feedback piece is so critical. There are some things that I could structure into the way that I teach that you as a learner, it just make you uncomfortable. I may be, coming from a place where I feel like, direct eye contact and the closer I get to you and, some of the things that we're taught to do as educators, but those may be the things that give you oh my goodness, this lady is too close. I'm not comfortable with an adult looking me eye to eye and so on and so forth. So giving them the opportunity to have that feedback and that voice into what things will look like in their classroom. I can't say kudos enough to that.
Very important. Ms. Johnson.
Yeah, I would say that everyone coming to a campus, whether it's the administration, any staff, students, parents who walk through the building, or caregivers, that there needs to be a sense of felt safety. And a lot of that, what it boils down to is how are you connecting with all of the individuals on campus? So our students being greeted, like not just, hi, everybody, and I'm talking to another teacher, but like you're individually like, hi, Kendra, hi, Katie, and as they're coming through the classroom. When parents are coming in, do they feel welcome, right? When they come to a classroom or when they come to a campus, do they feel welcome? Do they feel appreciated? All of these things. Same with students and teachers. And so a big piece of that I feel like that needs to be done like consistently is how do we check in with kids? How do we check in with parents? And when we are checking in with a parent about a student, it doesn't have to be a negative experience. Like, how do we do these positive check-ins with our parents about our students to say like, hey, Johnny did such a great job today. I just wanted to give you a high five, kudos, or whatever. I'm glad that you guys are working a little bit extra on the multiplication chart or whatever it is. And then like as students are coming into the classroom, Like, how was your day? I remembered you had a baseball game this past weekend or a football game last night. And I know, like, for instance, my son, he had a football game last night and he didn't get home until after 10 o'clock, right? Still have to shower and do all these things and homework. So he had a long night. So if his teacher knew, like, oh, I remember how did you guys do on the football game last night? And notice that maybe he's a little sluggish today, but are we taking that out on the kiddo because they're a little sluggish today? But if we didn't check in with them, how would we know? And so just some of these little things that we can do every single day. Like, I'm not trying to promote the Rhythm app right now, but that was such a cool application to have, because there's all sorts forms of check-ins. There could be a thumbs up, thumbs down, the Rhythm app, there's a mood meters, there's engine plates, the list can go on and on and on. There's so many cool things on Teachers Pay Teacher and Pinterest. But my thing is, what is your follow through with the check-in? If a student is saying that they're having a bad day, or this happened last night, or whatever, or they're having a good day or great day, how do we follow through with that? Do we just start teaching and we know that a kiddo had a bad day? And so how do we do those things? How do we make it so that they feel warm, welcome, connected, and felt safety, and that the teacher and the principal and all the staff care about their learning and their well-being? Because that's what's going to get kids to keep showing up. That's what's going to get parents to participate in their education for their kiddos, right? And so it's kind of like this all around. That's how teachers are going to keep showing up for school to teach our kids. Because like we've all said before, like, this has been a hard last few years on everybody, parents, teachers, principals alike. And everybody's just doing the best they can with where they are in this moment. And so I think that is probably something that we could do a little bit more, and not just, how are you doing? Fine, and keep moving, right? It's a little bit more than that.
Ooh, agreed, and agreed. As a parent, I have to say, and I consider myself an educator because I worked in K-12 for many, many, many years, but I have to say, nothing made the afternoon or the evening run as smoothly or feel as great was than to get a teacher sending home a positive report, to have an administrator call and give me details about my child that I had no idea they knew about, but in a positive light. I remember the first time a school staff member showed up at one of my son's basketball games. When I tell you, it made the rest of his school year. He was excited to go to school. He was excited to learn the content that teacher was teaching. He knew that he was seen as a person and how he was doing mattered to them. So ways that we can spread that and make that correlation known to more people. When you care about the individual student, when you care about their well-being, when you facilitate that well-being, they become better learners, they become better people. So I know I like affirmation, so why wouldn't a student like affirmation? All right, we're about to transition for our last 5 minutes into another door prize, but what I need everyone in the room to do before we transition into this door prize is make us a promise that you'll continue this conversation in other settings and with other people. Let this be a seed that's planted for you, and you share the fruit of this seed being planted. If you will commit to having this challenging conversation about creating a space where students feel seen, heard, cared about, acknowledged in your school setting, just simply type "I will" in the comment box for me. If I can get, let's say, 10 I wills, we'll go ahead and do this door prize drawing. How about that? All right, we've got our first. Oh, not just an I will, I promise. Yes. These conversations only matter. How much they matter is exponentiated by us not keeping it here in this space, but by us taking it outward and following through. Just like we want our teachers and educators to follow through, I'm asking that we be the ones that follow through with this encouragement and motivation. All right, this next door prize is sponsored by Rhythm Insights. One of the things we talked about today was knowing where the need is and being short-staffed and not having the people resources or the manpower resources to show up for each and every student. One of the things that Rhythm Insights does so well is it gives you that bird's eye view of what's going on for your entire district. It allows you to see where more professional development might be needed, or where a hotspot of hungry students may be, or where students are experiencing more than the norm of the rest of the district, anxiety or sadness or conflict. So there is in the chat a video link for Rhythm Insights. Make sure you save that so that you can watch it later. But now that we know who sponsored this door prize or what feature sponsored, let's go ahead and roll. I love this lucky draw thing. I wish you guys could see it like I see it, but we'll fix that for the next webinar. It's like the Wheel of Fortune. All righty, Courtney S., congratulations. Please be sure to send me a private message. I'm pretty sure I have your information in the registration, but congratulations, Courtney S. I would also like to say thank you to our presenters today. I appreciate your willingness to discuss. I appreciate your vulnerability to talk about a topic that has been taboo for so long, anxiety, student well-being, whole child. I thank you all from the bottom of my heart, and I hope that we get a chance to connect again soon. Do you guys have any contact info that you would like to leave for anyone who might want to reach out to you about any strategy that you discussed here today? If so, feel free to leave it in the chat. If not, we're going to call it a day, guys. All right. This concludes our webinar. Stay tuned. Make sure that someone at Rhythm has your correct email address, or if there's someone you want us to send the registration link to in the future so that they can be a part of these conversations, guys. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, guys. Thanks so much.